Welcome everybody. Good midday, good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. As Mike said, today we're going to discuss JDA's E3 offering versus the JDA SCPO platform and what might be good decisions for your company along that path. So my name is Brad Murak, and I'm a senior manager here in Spinnaker's JDA practice organization. And I have spent my consulting tenure implementing advanced planning solutions, business processes, segmentation strategies, and project managing, working across many of the verticals, including retail, distribution, and manufacturing. As well, on the line, and our primary speaker today is going to be Jeff Keyser. Jeff, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jeff Keyser. I've been working in the JDA E3 and Manugistics SCPO space for well over 25 years. Started out as a E3 user, then came to JDA, and then kind of made the transition to SCPO, which many E3 customers are contemplating. And I've had significant experience working with retailers, manufacturers, and government agencies.
All right, thank you. So our goal today is to answer the question such as, should your organization consider making a move from the advanced replenishment platforms of E3, whether it's advanced store replenishment or advanced warehousing replenishment, to JDA's SCPO platform offering of JDA demand and fulfillment with order optimization? If we pursue this path, what do we stand to gain by undertaking this? As well, is there items that we stand to be confronted with or lose on? So we're going to proceed through this content by starting with some of today's environmental and business challenges, and then possible paths that you can go through both within the E3 foundation as well as the SCPO path. And then we'll dive into the deeper details behind the SCPO solution, migrating to it, organizational impacts before we wrap up.
All right, today's business climate is much more volatile than it's been in the past. Customers have a lot more choice, they're more demanding, they're much less patient, and it's difficult to operate effectively in this environment because we have a lot more volatile interactions with customers than before. And they have a lot more choice, so it's kind of hard to see how they're going to be where they're going to go with their sales or their purchases. And that makes them much more demanding than they were in before. They're more enabled and much less tolerant to waiting and things that they have in the past. Common challenges for E3 customers in this business climate is there's a lack of visibility across the supply chain and understanding all the different demand signals that are there. Customers can buy in stores, they can buy online, and that's very different from how things were 10 or 15 years ago, where primarily customers bought in stores. Now they can buy online, they can buy in the store, and trying to understand where you need to have the inventory to take care of the customer is becoming challenging. And then that creates challenges for the supply team as well, because now they have to figure out where to put the inventory. It's challenging for them to understand things. And with E3, it's difficult to see that because it only really cares about today's need at this location. It doesn't really have that end-to-end visibility, and it doesn't really have a time phase. It doesn't really understand dates and things like that. Has minimal ability to see the impact of delayed or canceled orders. And the architecture dates back to the 1980s. It's a client-server, AS400-based kind of environment, and that's not really state-of-the-art or really a focus in today's IT climate. So it's really quickly becoming a dinosaur, and it's time to kind of move on from those outdated technologies. So the challenge for us in the E3 space is where do we go from here? And there's really business process and technical challenges and solutions here. So one of the things we got to decide to do is, okay, can we get everything that we can out of E3 and get every last drop of the return on that investment? Or is it really time to pursue new tools that are better suited to current and future needs? And the path that we have to choose isn't easy. You can remain on E3 and stay on the current E3 installation and licensing. You can review and assess to see if reconfiguring E3 and purchasing additional licenses is going to deliver the benefit that's going to make it worthwhile to your organization. You can kind of train up everybody to see if that just being better skilled in the system is going to give the return that you need. Or you can look to transform your organization and employ new technologies so you're capable not only of dealing with today's challenges, but also future challenges to drive the business forward. Whatever path you choose, Spinnaker is here to help. We can help you get the most out of your existing E3 install, or we can also help you migrate to JDA SCPO demand and fulfillment and order optimization. And the majority of the rest of today's webinar will focus really on upgrading to demand and fulfillment and getting the most out of a SCPO solution. So moving to SCPO, what are your options? How do you go about doing it, and what are you going to gain is kind of what we're going to get into on this next set of slides. So there's really two main options when upgrading to SCPO that you can pursue. One, you can go the hybrid migration, which really means replacing E3's forecasting engine with JDA demand. So you kind of have a hybrid kind of thing as you'll forecast in JDA demand, but the buying and replenishment is still done in E3. Or you can do a full migration and system replacement where JDA demand would be the forecasting engine and JDA fulfillment and order optimization would be used for buying and replenishment. So JDA demand is going to give a lot of benefits. One, you're going to gain complete visibility to all the demand signals throughout the enterprise. There's significantly more statistical models to handle all the various demand signals in your organization, and there's even specialized algorithms to handle specific situations. There's a much better, user interface to review and adjust the forecast and manage the forecasts. There are tools to enable collaboration throughout the organization between forecasting, sales, marketing, other parts of the organization, even external partners if needed. Easy ways for the users to review historical performance, and also there's methods to save off historical performance, which is very much lacking in the current E3 tool right now. So getting better forecasts if that's important to you, then moving up to JDA demand is important. Not all the products sell the same, so having multiple algorithms to deal with these different products is important. The three algorithms that are primarily available in ASR, AWR, the E3 ones, really all perform kind of the same. There's really kind of a one-size-fits-all. So here in JDA demand, we have a whole bunch of algorithms that we can use. Not only that, they have a lot of extra tuning parameters that allow you to really fine-tune the forecast and get a really good forecast out of a JDA demand tool. So I kind of think about it as like if you had a car. If you're in ASR or AWR, it's kind of like having a car that only has a couple of gears. It's really hard to get up to speed if you can't get out of second gear. So again, having more gears and allows you to do things more efficiently and more effectively. And when it comes to forecasting, that usually means more algorithms with more capabilities.
So one might be concerned that I already have limited resources within my organization, and if you're adding more ways for me to do a forecast and more statistical models, is that just going to create more headache? And there we'll just leave you with the tidbit that no, JDA has thought through this, and they actually do provide an assistive tool to help you go through the demand history, and then it proposes to you what of these various forecasting models and parameters are most appropriate for each of your products, and therefore help you pick, the appropriate speed or the appropriate gear for what you have to push forward with.
Another advantage of using JDA demand forecasting is setting up forecasting hierarchies. Kind of the example I have on this slide is a product-based hierarchy. At the bottom, we have item or SKU, and then we have style. We go up to subclass, class, and then subdepartment. One of the things that the demand planner can do is they can make changes at any level of those hierarchies and then push the change up or down as needed. So if I was working in apparel, let's say, I could go to the style level and I could make changes at the style level and then push those down to all the items, which would be the sizes and colors underneath it. So instead of having to go and touch every item location, which is what I would have to do in ASR or AWR, now I could just go to one place and make that change. Also, if there are particular items that sell really, really well at the lower level or they're unique at that level, you can make changes at that low level and roll that up. And there's an example here of doing that like for motor oil on the slide. Again, the hierarchies enable the demand planner to be more efficient, and also you're able to forecast at levels where it really makes sense to get the most out of the forecasting engine or algorithm. Tracking forecast performance is important. If you don't track your performance, it's really hard to determine how to get better. And one of the things that's important with forecasting is tying it to how long it takes to get product. So if I can get product in 1 or 2 weeks, like if it's a local supplier, yeah, I probably want to see what my forecast was a couple weeks ago when I placed the order to kind of line that up. But what if I have something that takes significantly longer to get? What if I got to get something from a manufacturer across the country and it takes me 4 weeks to get it? I really need to look at what was my forecast 4 weeks ago when I placed the order. Or even further back, I got to look at maybe importing items where now I'm bringing something from Asia and it's going to take me 4 months to get it. I've committed to that inventory 4 months ago. So what was the quality of the forecast then is when the inventory was committed to, and look at the accuracy then, and then look to figure out, okay, did we really have all the information that we needed then or not, and then look to fix the forecast. If we make a last-minute change to the forecast last week for something we bought 4 months ago, it really doesn't help the forecasting process. There's really no way to improve it. Last-minute changes really don't help when you've already really committed to the product. So again, the better information we have and the better information we can use is what we need to focus on. And measuring that means when we're committing to the inventory.
Another way that these lead times and this lagged performance evaluation can come in handy is now that we're working on tighter and tighter ships within our inventory positions and our communications, it allows us to capture the forecast and measure the reliability of that forecast based on different processes and interaction points. I may receive from my marketing group or my merchandising group insights that I adjust my forecast to at 2 months out or 1 month out, and then my sales team or the flyer comes through and sets things and gives me adjustments at the 1 month or the 3 weeks out. And then I have actual execution in my stores or through my DCs. And being able to capture the forecast historically and measure the forecast historically, I can go back and evaluate how much value add am I getting better information and better insight through my iterative processes. And I can expand into questions and concepts along those lines by some of the enablement within the JDA demand offering.
Moving on to fulfillment, adding that in there is going to bring the same order review workflow that users are used to in ASR. Order optimization is really bringing the E3 functionality into fulfillment. And that's going to bring also, in addition to the same kind of style of review, the to-do menu, those kind of things that users are used to in an E3 environment. Now they're going to get end-to-end supply chain visibility. They can see how the inventory is going to be affected over time. Not only can they see today's today's requirements, they can see what they're going to need for tomorrow or next week, and they can start to do what-if scenario modeling. If they can also, if they're notified there's an order is going to be late or something like that, they can see how that affects the inventory and how that has that domino effect throughout the supply chain. They're able to see what that effect is going to be. So this is a good example of kind of illustrating the difference in how the systems kind of look at requirements. In the very lower left-hand corner, we have kind of ASR, AWR, which really just looks at one replenishment cycle at a time. So that kind of ties up looking at the top illustration where we have what you would see in fulfillment and order op, is we would see several of these order cycles through the timeline, and then we'd be able to see how the inventory would be through there. So we can see when the receipts are going to happen, what the on-hands will be. We'll be able to see if we dip into safety stock and things like that and understand what the requirements are over time. That's just part of looking at the tool and operating in a time-phased requirement. So that's just a standard view where in ASR, AWR, if you wanted to see projections further out, you'd have to go run a projection and look at it separately. It's not part of the order calculation. It's a separate kind of bolt-on module that kind of does it. So it's really not inherent to how the ordering and the requirements are done.
And a subtle differentiation on top of this is that when ASR or AWR is calculating that cycle time, it needs to know what's on order. We're all familiar with that. But in order to get that time phase sawtooth and time series picture of replenishment after replenishment expectations within SCPO fulfillment order optimization, the system has to understand and does indeed understand the timing of that on order. So it's not just that I have 1,000 units or 2 truckloads on the way, but it's that one is coming this week and one is coming next week. And what does that mean in terms of my inventory position and when I need to trigger the next order?
Yeah, Brad makes a really good point on that, is that AWR and ASR really don't understand dates and receipts and what all of that when we're used to looking at that. It just has a general assumption that everything's going to come within the set lead time for the vendor. And we all know that doesn't happen all the time. So orders are late, they come in early, they come in late, they get delayed. E3 really can't understand that. There's an additional license. You could buy the order expedite module to give some visibility to those kind of situations, but the underlying order calculation engine is still not looking at dates. You have to have something extra look at the date to try and give you an alert or something like that. But the actual engine itself is not looking at any dates, where you would get that in fulfillment and it would intuitively understand that. So this slide we have the order review workflow, just to show the things are kind of similar in layout but better in fulfillment and order op. The top two illustrations show the E3 to-do menu and then what the to-do menu would look like with order optimization and fulfillment. Pretty much the same kind of layout, the same kind of information. Again, the supply planner comes here and looks at what their needs are, how many orders there are. All the things that they're used to doing in AWR, ASR are still here. And then if they drill down and take a look at the items, we have the item detail or the SKU detail in the lower right, and then we see the equivalent in fulfillment and order optimization. And if you look at the fulfillment and order optimization screenshot, there's significantly more information. There's a lot more information there. They can kind of see the time phase graph in the middle. The green shows the current inventory, and you can kind of see that kind of sells down as you go along the timeline, which moves from left to right. The blue is an SOQ or recommended SOQ, and you can see how that's going to come in and affect the order. And the red line in that screenshot shows the safety stock throughout time. So there's much more visibility than not only is it what I need now, but what are my needs going forward, and what's my inventory going to be 5 days from now, 6 days from now, or next week. They're going to see that on the screen. They're not going to see it in ASR AWR. And then they can also look out on the replenishment dashboard. This is another way for them to kind of look out there, and they can kind of see not only one order but several orders and how that affects that. So here we have that similar timeline view again. The red bar on the left is the initial order, and then the green bars laid out into the future are future orders along the timeline that are planned. And from here, the planner can see what the effect is to the inventory and how that is. And they can also look at all the numbers in the grid below the graph. And they can actually click and interact and see multiple views from in there instead of just one plain kind of cookie cutter view in ASR AWR.
And I'll answer the easy question because it fits of, yes, you can change the colors of the graph to suit your business needs and expectations. A customization option that isn't always available in some of the other tools.
And kind of related to that, seeing what's important is really critical to taking care of customers and getting the most out of the application. On the left-hand side, we kind of have the standard E3 reports, and they haven't changed since when they first created in the late 90s or the late 80s and the early 90s. Pretty much the same. You run them, you got to kind of look at them. That's all you can really do. Over on the left, we're going to have a view in fulfillment where we can see multiple locations within the supply chain, and we can kind of view the inventory. Again, we can see the inventory. We can see when receipts are. We can look at our safety stock, all of there, and then users can drill into any of those diagrams and see further detail there, and kind of get an understanding of how the inventory is going to flow through the entire network of the organization. Much more interactive, much more informational driven than what users can see in ASR or AWR.
And I want to reemphasize a point that Jeff just made there. Of even when I had that enhanced SKU detail within the order workflow, I was still looking at a specific SKU and what its behavior was. I have additional workbenches now within SCPO Fulfillment Order Optimization. This particular one in the upper right is called Replenishment Workbench, where I can define a hierarchy, and then I have visualizations, not just data charts, that show me what does my aggregate family look like, or what's my style code look like, and then below that I can see visualizations and spot graphs of each SKU, whether it's at different stores or different warehouses or different products of the same family, however I define my hierarchy, and I can visually glance at them to understand, am I healthy or am I not? If I quickly glance, my bottom left chart goes below the 0 line. I can drill into that straight from this screen, double-click in, blow that graph up, get the data grid below it, and start to try to figure out what's going on. That is a huge change from a static one-dimensional report.
The SCPO platform also provides a lot of reporting enhancements, we'll add on from what Brad was saying. There's a lot of different things that the planners have to use. There's dashboards. There's also a demand dashboard, which is shown on the left-hand side of the screen. The upper left shows Demand 360, which is a spreadsheet-style, hierarchy-driven forecasting and collaboration tool. And we have another view of the replenishment dashboard showing some pie charts. We have a forecast accuracy graph, kind of the waterfalls that's through the reporting module in SCPO, and then we also have a view of the to-do menu. Much more interactive tools compared to what you have in ASR AWR. They're also customizable. it's more than just Brad said, changing the colors. You can actually change how you want certain things laid out and seen in here to support the needs of your business, which is very different than ASR. You get whatever the standard report is and it kicks it out and that's it. The other thing that's important to remember with reporting is that we can actually store off the historical performance of things and call it up later so we can see how we're improving over time. If you want to do that in the E3 environment, that means you're manually saving off all that information, saving it externally, and then calculating all of that externally. There's no capability within the tool, within standard licenses to do that.
So if we go back to some of those major challenges that we're each confronted with today, I have much more insight into what is my demand, where is my demand, how is that demand changing over time, where is my supply, what options do I have with moving inventory around. All of those are much more enabled if I go down the SCPO path of the JDA software offering.
With new systems also bring changes to organizations and people. And what this is going to allow is more specialization within the inventory management of the supply chain team. And generally what we see is people start to divide up. In the E3 world, people do both. They forecast and they do the replenishment. In SCPO, normally we see those roles separate out. Somebody does the forecasting and another person will do fulfillment. And this enables better specialization, enables them to get better at certain elements of the elements of the job that are critical to the business. And that's important. It helps people provide better value to the organization.
So with those changes, just to reemphasize, the fundamentals here in the specialization does require a concrete focus and intentional incorporation of your organizational design, your roles and responsibilities, and active change management, because that specialization creates apprehension within the jobs as well as new roles that may have existed or segregation of roles and activities. So we really need to have a dimension of change management facilitation with any move from E3 into SCPO for those benefits. And then because of those systems, master data and the integration points of the time phase data and the transactions and everything else require it be absolutely paramount for master data maintenance, master data integrity, and master data cleanliness.
And also technology is important too. Having the SCPO platform provides web-based deployment and architecture, no more client installations that have to happen on all the users' PCs. That'll save the IT team a lot of work. Highly scalable Oracle database, runs on Unix and Windows servers, easy access to all the data. You can extract the data for reporting, export it. You can also import into the database. It's easily accessible. It also enables cloud installations, which are much harder to do on the AS400. And the last point I want to make about the SCPO that's important is the tables are very customizable. So if I'm looking at the product attribute table and I need to have a couple of extra attribute fields added, that's a 5-minute job. Just pull it up in SCPO, make the changes to the table, add the fields, and they're available now to be used. Can't happen in the AS400 E3 world. I'm like, that's a complete database re-architecture, and that creates all kinds of problems. So you're really limited to whatever fields are created for you, that's what you're stuck with. There's really no ability to go back and expand certain tables and make them larger to accommodate additional data elements that you need to run your business. And so that flexibility is critical.
As a business manager, the scalability, the architecture dimensions, are fantastic from an IT and a technology support. But from the business, that ability to add a table or add attributes to the system as I see fit, to have my sales hierarchy or my product hierarchy in the system for filtering or selecting or extraction for BI and reporting. You know, a platform that can easily be connected to and seen to understand the data and extracted for those reports, and isn't such a dark or confined space. Those are big when I have to answer those hard-pressed questions from an organizational perspective. And then coming on to the platform, the SCPO platform being such a strong foundation has over 30 other modules that all sit on the same framework. So as my business expands either through M&A or through product diversification, or I expand vertically or horizontally, there are other modules that easily attach and can leverage much of the same master data and structures, and I'm not building all of these isolated systems that have to talk and interact with each other. Instead, they're all leveraging the same underpinnings.
And the links to all those systems are already there. It's not like you have to build them or anything, where it's just much easier to handle. So in summary, comparing the two, E3, AWR, ASR, we have limited forecasting options. It's pretty much today's order only in terms of how it looks. If you want to add additional features to handle certain things like multi-tier, order expedite, things like that, those are usually additional licenses. So if you need those capabilities, even if you want to stay on E3 or you know, you want to stay there, you're still going to have to pay additional license if you want those capabilities if it's available. You also have the outdated architecture issues on the 400. Again, moving to SCPO, much more forecasting options and capabilities, hierarchy-based forecasting. We have the whole time phase looking at how we replenish, how we forecast. It just enables better planning. That's really the thing, is you're getting less reactivity in AWR and ASR to plan and be more anticipating of what's going to happen. And again, we get the current state-of-the-art architecture and the focus of JDA, which is what they're investing in right now, and that's going to enable you to have a solution that's going to not only handle today's needs, but it's going to grow with you into the future. So you're going to get a robust multi-echelon inventory replenishment solution to handle your needs.
So as the head of an organization, my 3 bullets from this would be, I should be able to drive a better forecast because I have more options that are much more intelligent. I can see my supply chain end to end in a collective picture and drill where I need to. And then my supply chain picture is time phased for me to understand what's happening tomorrow, not just what is happening today. So let's look at which approach should I take. You know, we mentioned both a hybrid approach or a full migration approach. The hybrid or the partial migration approach is saying, okay, we definitely need to capitalize on the opportunity within forecasting. However, at the moment we want to stick with the confidence and the assurance we have within the replenishment or supply planning side of the house. And that's fine. JDA fully supports your ability to do so. You can move your forecasting and take on those change management principles of getting that higher, better quality demand signal while still having the known replenishment workflow and user interface. And you can stay there, or when the time is right, you can then also move the replenishment side over to fulfillment order optimization to have the full end-to-end solution. Conversely, if it's easier to take a larger bang approach, the entire solution can be migrated over into a common user interface and a common look and feel to expand on from that point forward. As we've discussed in the prior points, you get each of the pros and cons as you take the steps, but know that you can take a one-step or two-step approach when assessing, is this the right move for your organization? And with that, I'd like to thank you all for attending today's webinar on E3 Advanced Replenishment and JDA SCPO and whether it might be a great move for your company. As mentioned before, whether you want to stay on E3, just do some enhancements, take on some customized training, or potentially do a strategic roadmap assessment on, is SCPO the right move for you? We're here for you with any of your questions or concerns. Questions that came in was going between the terminologies. We've thrown out a lot of terms today: SCPO, fulfillment, order optimization, demand, etc. And what does all that mean? Because it's a lot. So the distinction is JDA demand is the forecasting engine or the forecasting side of the equation. Just as the role specialization occurs, in order to properly do that with all of the advanced options that exist, it's a separate feature function module of the tool. Then within fulfillment, JDA fulfillment is a long-standing product for distribution management, transfers, etc. But what it lacks on its own is what advanced replenishment and AR bring to the table of consolidating and right-sizing the order against a vendor's portfolio. In order to get that vendor or portfolio optimization aspect and that order review workflow that we know, you've got to use the addition to fulfillment called order optimization, or commonly nicknamed order opt. So it's with order opt as part of fulfillment that I get my end-to-end, top-to-bottom picture inclusive of adjusting the orders to make the best use of my suppliers.
Looks like we have one more question. Now the question is would I need more or less people if I move to SCPO? I would say generally you're probably not going to need to increase headcount, or you're not going to gain so much efficiency that you're going to cut headcount. It's really making the existing team more effective and allowing them to specialize some of their skills to get the most out of the application to make them more effective. So they're going to get better results and things like that, but it's not going to be something where there's suddenly you don't need you don't need a lot less people. Generally, most implementations I've seen, it's generally the same number of people.
Now, what we found in that is that while headcount may not necessarily go down, the specialization, as Jeff mentioned, and the role and responsibility realignment has frequently created what I'll say is additional bandwidth or additional employee or resource hours within the organization, as I'm not trying to field or manage so many desks of activity. But each of those is very unique to the organization and its product portfolio, and would be something that can be discussed and addressed during a strategic assessment of what is the most appropriate fit for your company. I think that wraps up our list. So with that, we will thank you for attending. If you or anyone in your organization has any further questions or follow-ups, please don't hesitate to reach out and we'll be happy to schedule some time.